Hello, everyone, and welcome into another Network 216 exclusive. I am Tyler Johnson. I am joined by, from the Petty Eddie podcast, Mr. Eddie McDonald. Eddie, how we doing, man?
I'm doing great. The time of this recording, I just recorded my own podcast for later tonight. So I'm excited for that. So doing good. Can't wait for the rest of this week, WrestleMania week. That's what I talk about this week on the podcast. But right now, we're not talking about WrestleMania. We're talking about someone else.
Exactly. And before we get into tonight's Network 216 exclusive, be sure, guys, if you would, to subscribe to the Network 216 channel if you haven't already, which you can do for free. We are actually having a subscriber-only giveaway to thank you guys for helping us reach YouTube partner. The deadline to enter that contest is next Monday. So you have 1 week to enter. It's very simple. We have a video on the channel for you guys to follow all those instructions, but also drop a like on this video. What happens when you do that? You help the YouTube algorithm grow, which helps Network 216 grow as well. So thank you for all that support. Eddie, tonight we're going to talk about a situation that really has spiraled out of control for a rival of the Browns. We're happy to see it, but it is the main talking point around the NFL, and that is Lamar Jackson. It came out today from Lamar himself on his Twitter account that he requested a trade from the Ravens on March 2nd. First off, this is what I have to say. How in the world does this stay quiet until March 2nd? And two, you have to ask yourself, if you're the Ravens, how did you let it get to this point that you're going to let arguably one of the best quarterbacks in your franchise history, yes, because, of course, you stole the original Browns, let one of the best quarterbacks you've ever had leave your franchise?
Man, I thought that same thing that you did about it. We're now had it 25 days for us to know this. I was saying that on my way home from work. I was like, man, that's a long time for this, for no one to know, no insider, no one. Okay, well, whatever. And then Lamar comes out, that Lamar takes to social media and says, hey, this is cap, or this is said. I love that. And I don't know how it got to this point. They didn't do what the Bills did with Josh Allen and pay him early because they were thinking the quarterback market was going to shrink somehow, which that makes no sense because yesterday's price is not today's price, and the revenue of the NFL is continuing to soar out of the stratosphere. So it's good for us as Browns because the Ravens fans are sort of in hell right now, and we've been in hell forever, obviously. But yeah, I think this is great for Lamar and great for us as fans of Browns.
Yeah, for me, man, I'm more so just, again, this is your star quarterback. This is the guy that has led you to success and is the reason right now that you're considered one of the better franchises in the NFL. And what really set this in motion, I think that the most important thing we have to discuss is really what set this in motion. It was last offseason when Browns owner Jimmy Haslam basically told DeSean Watson, come to Cleveland, I'll write you a blank check. Now, DeSean Watson did decide to play for the Cleveland Browns. A lot of people believe money was a factor, but they also met with him, Kevin Stefanski, head coach, Andrew Berry, general manager, and the owner. But Watson also believed this was the best chance for him to win. Now, Jimmy Haslam gave DeSean Watson $230 million in guaranteed money. After DeSean Watson, all the issues that came along with that, with what he was coming off of in Houston and everything going along with that, Lamar Jackson decides that he wants that money, guaranteed contract. And he has said the Ravens offered him 3 years, $133 million. So I want your thoughts on this, because if you are the Ravens, this is what you have to ask yourself, and this is what we're going to get into as far as other teams too. Would you be comfortable giving Lamar Jackson right now $230 million guaranteed? Or how would you be handling this situation? Because right now, we have no indication that there is any team. All these teams are moving on at quarterback, except maybe a select few. But other than that, everyone else is set at quarterback. So what do you think happens from here?
See, I think that there's a misconception. I think I've said this, one of our shows before. I think there's a misconception. I don't know if Lamar's ever come out and said, hey, I want the same deal or better that DeSean Watson got. I do know he wants the fully guaranteed money based off everything that everyone's reported. I don't know if I've seen that what he asked for himself, what he asked for. So if it's not the 5 years, $230 million, say he wants 5 years, $210 million or $200 million, and wants that fully guaranteed, I think that's more what he wants. And if I'm the Ravens, I'm giving him that. again, it's not my money, so I don't care. But if I'm a team in the most important position in all of team sports is the quarterback. If you don't have a good quarterback in the NFL, you're not winning much. I mean, we've seen that for 2 decades now with the Browns. Bad quarterback play. We had slightly good quarterback play and made the playoffs, had a nice little win there, and then lost to not even a superior quarterback because he got knocked out of the game. But we didn't have good enough play to get there. So now we do. So if I'm the Ravens, I'm giving him that money, not just because, they're going to be in cap hell or whatever the Browns are in now or whatever, but just because he's such a dynamic talent that he mostly beats you on his legs, but he can also beat you with his arm. And I know the narrative is, he's injury prone. He's missed like the majority of games missed are the past 2 seasons. So if I'm Baltimore, I'm saying here's this check. I'm not going over this limit. If you want to get to that limit, great, I'll give you that. But outside of that, I don't know how this plays out because now we know that Lamar wants out. I think we've known that sort of. But he comes out and says, hey, I requested this trade. And as Jim Harbaugh's do his media day at the owners' meetings, right as he's about to go there, boom, this happened. So, of course, he's asked about that. Oh, Lamar's our guy. I love Lamar. We love Lamar here. You haven't built a roster around him, even when he was on that rookie deal. So I'm paying him if I'm him, for that matter, out the teams that don't need a quarterback.
Yeah, this whole situation is just, again, if you're the Ravens, I don't know how you even let it get to this point. I mean, he should have been extended way before this even happened, first off. And that they let it get this far is just truly an embarrassment for that organization. Not that I'm sad at all to see them embarrassed. It's just, I don't know how, like, as a fan of the Ravens, I don't know how you can, like, feel at all like you just don't want to go and just fire every single person that is a part of this organization for the way they've handled this situation. Lamar's a guy, you have to pay Lamar because he is the guy that your entire offense is completely based around. And you're basically saying that even though you've done all this for us, you've led us to all these playoff appearances, had us as a Super Bowl contender. Forget it. We want to move on. We don't think we can win with you. We don't want to pay you. And then they go out. This was what I think was the ultimate kick and just the nuts for Lamar is when you go out and trade for Roquan Smith and you make him one of the highest paid linebackers in the league, and then you give him nearly $100 million, but you won't pay your quarterback. Like, that's just, to me, that's just ridiculous. Personally, I just can't comprehend doing that. Like, I don't get it. And then your big move in free agency to even try and convince Lamar is go get Nelson Aguilar at wide receiver. Like, okay. I'm sure that's going to convince him. But, Eddie, there's one thing that Ian Rappaport reported today that I thought really was interesting, considering Lamar Jackson requested this trade on March 2nd. He said that even though Lamar Jackson has requested a trade, he's been actively negotiating with the Ravens as recently as last week. So this is what I want to ask you. Is the door completely shut on Lamar returning? Because this is a really unique situation that we've never seen in the NFL. Is the door really shut on this, or is it just Lamar wanting to finally get the money that he believes he deserves, and he'd be willing to go back to Baltimore if they could somehow still find that agreement?
I think the latter there. The door is still open, especially if they were in as late as last week. I think there's a good possibility that he could come back. Obviously, we would not like that as Browns fans, but as a fan of the players getting theirs, I want every player to get theirs. I want everyone to have guaranteed contracts like they do in other sports. I think it's ridiculous they don't, but that's another subject for another day. But I do think that the door is open here. If Lamar finds that right price, hey, I want this, and the Ravens like, you know what? All right, cool, we'll give that to you. That's a little bit more reasonable for us. Even it could be $20 million or $40 million, wherever the Ravens are where they don't want to pay him, and then it's close to that, and Lamar's like, you know what, I'll take this if you give it to me. And I'll sign right now. Okay, cool, we'll give you X amount of years for X amount of dollars, and we'll guarantee all of that. So I don't think the door is closed, but I also don't see the Ravens wanting to pay guaranteed money. And I don't think that's the Browns' fault either. Like, everyone's putting this on the Browns. This is on the Ravens. Like you said earlier, they had chances to extend him. Josh Allen the same draft classes Lamar got his extension and got his money. Obviously, it was not fully guaranteed because that would come later with the DeSean deal, but he got his, and now he's comfortable in Buffalo, and they're hopefully building around him for his sake, so he doesn't have to run all the time. Same thing needs to happen in Baltimore. They have a good running attack, but they have no weapons for Lamar, and you go out and get, like you said, Nelson Aguilar. Yeah, okay, great. So the door is open, but I really think it's open with like a foot in the door. Someone has their foot in there, like, hey, hold on, let's see about this. And then it said that the Colts are interested, so maybe. And I've read a lot of things that Jim Irsay is like quarterback and doesn't necessarily want to go the draft route. He can get a commodity in the NFL. So interesting, but I don't think the door is completely shut. I do think someone has their foot in there saying, whoa, hold up.
I think with the Colts, because the Colts are interesting. We'll get to some teams here in a minute. But the fact that, again, everyone wants to blame the Browns here for giving DeSean Watson guaranteed contract. You know what it also says? Whether you agree with how they went about it or not, Jimmy Haslam is going to pay and do whatever it takes to win. And he's going to put money forth in order to do that. There aren't many owners that can basically say to players, here's $230 million as soon as you sign the dotted line in an escrow account, and I'll give it to you. Like, that's just not common in the NFL. Like, a lot of owners just can't do that. Or they're just not willing to do it, for one. And the Ravens are just wanting another team to do their negotiation for them. I will say, the part that hurts Lamar in all of this, the fact he doesn't have an agent, I really do think plays into this a lot more than people want to acknowledge, because he's the one representing himself. We saw Laremy Tunsil do it, and now he's one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid left tackle in the NFL. But this is a star quarterback here that a lot of people would want to represent. So it makes you wonder. This situation is just very interesting how this is going to shake out. We're going to wrap it up with this. You mentioned the Colts. There are a couple other teams that could be interested in Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think ends up happening with him? And then obviously I'll give my take. How do we see this ending up? Do we see him playing in Baltimore? Do we see him sitting out a year and just letting his like Le'Veon Bell did, and letting his contract expire, but leaving $32 million on the table? How do we see this playing out?
See, it's tough because anything can happen. As soon as we hit stop on this, there could be breaking news, or tomorrow morning we get up, there could be something breaking that we find out about. So I'll rank it in terms of what I think. I think one, Lamar's out. Lamar goes somewhere, someone like the Colts, someone like the Commanders takes a shot at him. I can't think of other teams off the top of my head. If the 49ers somehow would trade Trey Lance and 2 firsts and maybe a second, third, maybe they get involved somehow. They're not necessarily quarterback needy, but the other two teams, the Colts and the Commanders, I think that's one of the two landings. So I hope it's the Commanders. So he's out of the AFC. We don't have to see him until we play him in the Super Bowl, if we get there and they get there. Second would be the return to Baltimore. Maybe he does decide to play on the tag this year, and then if they retag him next year, it'll be up in price. And then I think last of his option, I don't think he'll sit out, because that's a lot of money to give up, even if you're just strong. That's $32 million. And I hope he gets every penny he thinks that he's worth, because I think we all should in life. If you think that you're worth something and you go tell your boss, hey, I think this, and this, have the reasons to. And like you said, he's negotiating on his own behalf. So I'll put that he's in Indy or Washington, back to Baltimore, and then third, I don't think he sits out, but it is a possibility.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with number one for me. I'm going to say Baltimore. I mean, not Baltimore, Indianapolis, because Jim Irsay, I believe, would pay whatever it takes. He just seems like he's that type of owner to do that. They also brought in Shane Steichen, who worked with Jalen Hurts, already very familiar with the run-based type of offense that Lamar Jackson's accustomed to. So I think the Colts make a lot of sense, and it would happen after the draft, because the Colts aren't going to give up that top pick, nor should they. That's just stupid. But I think he ends up with the Colts. And then if I had to put other teams in that, I would probably put Atlanta and then Washington is my best guess. San Francisco is a sleeper. Like you said, cap-wise, it'd be interesting to see how they make that work. But if he landed in San Francisco, that would just be scary. And I agree with you. I don't see him sitting out because, again, $32 million on the table. When Le'Veon Bell did it, I think it was a $10 million franchise tag. So huge difference. And keep in mind, Lamar was the 32nd pick in the draft. So it's not like his contract as a first rounder compared to being the number 1 pick like Baker Mayfield is as much money. So that's the other aspect to this. Anyway, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I know we'll be monitoring this very closely. Curious to see what happens if Lamar ends up somehow staying in Baltimore. Either way, as Browns fans, I have to admit we're really enjoying this. I appreciate everyone tuning into this Network 216 exclusive. Be sure, guys, again, drop a like on today's video. Please help that YouTube algorithm grow. We really appreciate that. And subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. The Petty Eddie podcast will be on YouTube at 7 o'clock on Wednesday evening. Make sure you don't miss that, followed by the Faithful Dawgs podcast at 8 o'clock with special guests covering the New York Jets, Matt O'Leary, as we break down the Elijah Moore trade. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will talk to you all again soon, and go Browns, baby.
Go Browns.